We are so prideful that we need God's judgment to knock us back into obedience. And even that is God's mercy. The Lord will humble you if he has to. Hello everyone, welcome back to my channel. My name is amentemesgenn and I make Christ-centered content here on YouTube. Today I just wanted to share a word of what the Lord has been teaching me through the word. But basically I read the story in Daniel chapter 4, and it's about King Nebuchadnezzar. I think I was trying to think about bring to God, I don't know, what the dangers of what a prideful heart can do. And I know it's kind of maybe random, but I was like just thinking, and the story of King Nebuchadnezzar came to my mind, and how like literally the dangers of a prideful heart. Like I don't even know how else to describe it. So basically let me give a little short rundown of this. So King Nebuchadnezzar is this king of a kingdom. He's the king of Babylon. And so this is while Daniel is alive in the Bible. And King Nebuchadnezzar has this dream. Daniel interprets the dream, and the dream is basically telling of the future of King Nebuchadnezzar. And it was a mercy of God to even have Nebuchadnezzar have this dream and Daniel interpret it, because the dream was basically, King Nebuchadnezzar, you have this huge kingdom, you know, it's great, but verse 25, you'll be driven from human society and you will live in the fields with wild animals. So you'll literally go crazy. You'll lose your mind. You'll become like an animal. You'll eat grass like a cow. You will be drenched with the dew of heaven. 7 periods of time will pass while you live this way until you learn. So this is Daniel talking to King Nebuchadnezzar. Until you learn that the Most High rules over the kingdoms of the world and gives them to anyone he chooses. But the stump and roots of the tree were left in the ground. This means that you will receive your kingdom back again when you have learned that heaven rules. And so Daniel was pleading for Nebuchadnezzar to be like, hey, please accept this and stop sinning, do what is right, turn from your wicked ways, be merciful to the poor, so perhaps then you will continue to prosper. So possibly he wouldn't have to go through that. But all those things did happen to King Nebuchadnezzar. He was prideful. He had a prideful heart. And he said, it's crazy. Bro, God is actually funny, because verse 30, it says, so this happened 12 months later. He looked out across the city and he said, look at this great city of Babylon. By my own power, so King Nebuchadnezzar saying, I did this by my own strength. By my power, I have built this beautiful city as my royal residence to display my majestic splendor. That is what pride is, that he's blinded and he thinks that all that he sees, his whole kingdom, is because of his own strength and his own might. He is not recognizing who God is, even though he was warned. And verse 31, I don't know why I find this funny. While these words were still in his mouth, so while he's like still saying these things, a voice down from heaven said, O King Nebuchadnezzar, ruler of this kingdom, you will be driven from human society. You will live in the field. So then it's literally repeating what happened in his dream. And this will happen to you. 7 periods of time will pass while you live like this until you learn that the Most High rules over the kingdoms of the world and gives them to anyone he chooses. This happens. He goes crazy. He was driven from human society. He ate grass like a cow. He was drenched with the dew of heaven. And he lived this way until his hair was as long as eagle's feathers, and his nails were like bird claws. But then King Nebuchadnezzar came back after the time had passed, and he said, my sanity returned, and I praised and I worshiped the Most High and honored the one who lives forever. And he says his rule is everlasting, his kingdom is eternal. So I'm saying all this to say it's so crucial for me, for everyone and anyone, to understand that this is all God's. And like, we cannot take credit for anything. Truly, we just can't. Since King Nebuchadnezzar was disobedient, God's judgment had to come in order for him to recognize who God was, and then God restored his kingdom to him, back to him, even more glorious than it was before. As it said, he said, when my sanity returned to me, so did my honor and kingdom and glory. Then King Nebuchadnezzar says, now I, Nebuchadnezzar, praise and glorify and honor the King of heaven. All his acts are just and true, and he is able to humble the proud. So he can say that with his whole chest because he was humble. And I guess my prayer is, God, yes, I'm going to make mistakes. Yes, we're all going to make mistakes. But Lord, like, this mind that you gave me is yours. This platform that you gave me is yours. This life that you've given me is yours. Help me never forget my position in your kingdom. And what I mean by that is, like, help me never forget that I am just a servant. That I'm simply just a servant of your kingdom. And yeah, like, his kingdom is eternal, you know? So that's the word of the day. for you guys and for myself. Recognize your position in God. And it's not even like, yes, it's a humble position. Hello. Like he humbled himself, to the point of death. I think it says in Philippians 2. And then God will uplift you. Like, it's not about the fame. It's not about the glory that we receive. But I'd rather live a humble life before God than mess my life up because I thought that I could do everything on my own. Because I thought that I was comparable to the might and strength of God. Like, and it's not as easy as I'm making it sound, because I'm realizing how prone our hearts are to idolatry. Like, I was just realizing it, like, in my own heart. I'm just like, even in the little things, like, dang, it's so easy for me to put other things before God. And I'm just like, Lord, what is it? And it's like, I do think that that's really the battle of our hearts as believers as we live on this earth, is the battle between flesh and spirit. That's where the crucifying of the flesh comes in daily. And I understand more and more as I get older what that means. Because I'm like, dang, like, I really have to put everything back to the feet of Jesus every day and repent and be like, God, I'm sorry for doing this. I'm sorry for doing that. I'm sorry for thinking I could do things on my own. I'm sorry for thinking that I know the way, like, that's better. Like, so many different things. And so this story that I'm reading is so humbling, and it reinstills a fear of God in you, and that's what I really pray for myself, that I have a fear of God and a reverence of God, because people out here are just not fearing God. And it's scary because he can take your mind. Like, I think we forget that God is like, he's loving. Yes, he is love. He is kind. He is compassionate. He is faithful. He is merciful. But it was literally out of God's mercy that he had to have that judgment against King Nebuchadnezzar in order for King Nebuchadnezzar to repent. For some of us, we are so prideful that we need God's judgment to knock us back into obedience. And even that is God's mercy. That's literally what happened to King Nebuchadnezzar. And so I'm like, God, as much as I can, I'm going to try to be obedient in the here and now, surrender these things to you. But there are still things that God is revealing in my own heart. Hey, surrender that. Hey, you were holding on to that. That's not of me. That's of the flesh. Let go of that. I will give you the power to do those things. That's the word for today. But I would suggest you to read Daniel chapter 4 yourself and just see this beautiful story. Moral of the story is, God will humble you if you don't humble yourself before him, so that his glory is revealed, so that you will understand your position in him, and ultimately so that you can repent and come back to him.